I'm John Miglosh for the Wisconsin DMA and the International Society for Strategic Marketing. Even though we have to stay apart, our smiles keep us together. And I'm not sure where it goes from here, but we'll skip to the end. Keep sharing your smiles. Colgate. Okay. Now, I'm doing that one for specific reasons because I'm going to go over to my PDF. Oops. Stop. You can never tell what's going to happen next. Okay. And what we want to talk about is Fishburne today has a cartoon, of course, about our brand promise. Okay. And so does Ritson, so I'm going to take them and glue them back together. But first of all, I wanted to say in Australia, Woolworths is partnering with Uber for next day delivery. We don't have much grocery in the Oh, I was thinking Walgreens. In Woolworths, yeah, we don't even have many Woolworths around the United States, so maybe they're bigger in Australia. But anyway, they're partnering with Uber out there in Australia and going to deliver next day groceries, which makes a lot of sense. Facebook is, and I haven't tried it out yet, I just found out about it today, a couple of articles out there. Facebook is creating its own Zoom version. You can have up to 50 people on it. And my wife tried House Party, and she didn't like it so much because it wasn't as clear about who was speaking, whereas Zoom is pretty clear. And so I don't know how Facebook's will come out, but I may actually try it out and see if we can get some people on there. But anyway, the point is that there's lots of competitors to Zoom. We've talked a little bit about Zoom's security. One of the advantages of knowing about Zoom's security issues is that when people on LinkedIn ask you to do a Zoom meeting, you don't have to go. That's what I tell them. I said, as a corporate policy, we're not using Zoom. So anyway, now let's get over here to the real stuff. Okay, so this, on the Zoom meeting here, we're updating our brand promise from inspiring, delicious moments of refreshing togetherness to in stock sometimes. And the point that Fishburne is making is that if you're not in stock, you're probably not in the mind. And Shopkick found that 85% of consumers say brand names don't matter during times of crisis, and 70% are purchasing different brands if the preferred one is not available. Well, that makes sense. You have the need. He drew this in 2014, I think, saying that, you've got salty and crunchy, satiety, sharing, family, happiness, world peace. We have this idea that we need to satisfy the higher levels of the Abraham Maslow pyramid of hygiene and etc. And the truth is, it's not true. First of all, Maslow faked his data. He was at the University of Wisconsin, so I'm somewhat familiar with it. And humans can be altruistic even in times of great distress and great need. So the whole thing was bunk, but it kind of has this makes sense to me allure. And that is, it's still taught in virtually all business schools, even though it's been totally discredited in the world of psychology. So, what do you do in this time of crisis? Well, you say we gotta throw out our creative. Here's a good one. I don't see our brand of pickle relish anywhere in here. My husband, my kids, my friends, Fifi, home, sunsets, me, travel, mom and dad. Right. Inside, and that's one of our brand loyalists. I promise to be loyal, forsaking all other brands unless you're out of stock, your competitor is on sale, or you're just not meeting my need states at the time. And okay, so that's pretty good. So that takes us over to Mark Ritson, who I always makes me think. And he says, we're moving now we've been into this now in the second month or so. The question isn't should we advertise, but how should we advertise? What tone should we take in this time of crisis? And he says, what's generally happening is that we look at our regular, hey Phoenix, I see you there. We look at our regular advertising and we say, oh, we can't use that because we've got a dozen people crowded around the product, or a firm handshake, or God forbid a hug. And every marketer in charge thinks the world has changed so much that every aspect of the brand's communications must now reflect the lockdown. Unshaven fathers holding babies, mothers in jogging bottoms, getting emotional on Skype. Okay, right. And this is another proverb here that you really need to focus on. Most brand managers lose interest in their advertising and want to change it long before the campaign even gets going, right? Marketers forget that the 4-month-long, 8-hour-a-day journey to create a new campaign was theirs and theirs alone. Most consumers never notice the ad before it's pulled and replaced with an equally transient successor. So now what we're doing is we're having these generic COVID-19 ads. A tinkling piano, monochrome deserted streets, an old newspaper blows past, empty chairs, gloomy skies, concerned faces. We've been there for you since 19-something, and the sun is going to rise, but in these unprecedented times, we can still be there for each other and our families. Slow motion video of employees interacting in a friendly yet socially isolated manner, children at play, and an old person waves through a webcam. Okay, so, and he says, it's cliched wank, and it's an enormous and embarrassing waste of money. And he points at genericism, which is a nice word I've never heard of before. And he says, why don't we just link to product benefits? That's the ladder that Fishburne was talking about. Let's go back down the ladder. Let's talk about our product. Formerly great brands threw away decades of heritage and turned to generic woke-washed nonsense lately. Right. Gillette was practically going under before this crisis, before nobody was shaving, because they decided to poop on all men. And that's who mainly buys their razors. So anyway, here's an interesting study. This is a guy named Orlando Wood, and he did a study that took into account the first few months of 2020, and including March. And there's a nifty graph, and he says there's no appreciable change in the ability of ads to connect with the audience. Everything will change forever after coronavirus, won't it? Right. Yes, that's what we think. But it's not true. Dot out there. And what it says is that it's the same. Basically, it's the same. Your existing advertising will work just fine. And Jolly Green Giant will work better because it's not context specific. A sense of history scores higher. And finally, ads that celebrate betweenness. And so Colgate actually gets plaudits for SmileStrong, which I think is mostly in Australia. We have community, family, and betweenness, and because it's been created entirely from consumers' own webcams, there's a genuineness and an emotional payoff missing from bigger budget attempts to do the same thing. Advertising that actually advertises the product. What an amazing idea. That's why it almost moved me to tears. Okay, good. And now I just wanted to go back to one of my favorite spots, and that is scientificadvertising.com, which was written 100 years ago and points back 50 years before that to, and David Ogilvy says it was the best thing he's ever written or read, and he's one of the legends, and of course, great guy. So this is a book this it is the book recommended by more advertising geniuses than any other. You can get it free at scientificadvertising.com. And it basically says that there are principles in the human brain that connect people with your product, and those don't go away. And so I highly recommend you get it, read it in this crisis. It'll open your eyes. It'll tell you where we know what's going on, which is the direct mail community knows better than anyone else. Why? Because we have high engagement. We know who got mailed. We know who didn't respond. We know who did respond. We can sort that all out. It's a labeled data set in AI parlance. So get this book and find out what's working and what will work tomorrow. Have a great day. Like and share. Your friends will think you're smart. Bye-bye.